instead?
Just Mridanga is not good.
Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Discussion.
Hare Krishna, everybody. We have Bhaktilata, Tarini, Shyam Prabhu,
We don't know.
Anshu, Swarna, Sumit, Sanju, Suchi, Bhavneet, Achita Radhe. Thank you all for joining.
Rima.
Rima, is she there?
Yeah, Rima's there. That's what
Okay,
we-
Rima, yes. All right. So, we'll open the tab. You do this last time?
Yeah. We did this also.
So we'll start with
Like, can I
Yes,
see if we did that also? Yeah.
you did this? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobhadayasya cheta ete anaviddham stitam sattve prasidati. As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. Purport: a living being in his normal constitutional position is fully satisfied in spiritual bliss. This state of existence is called Brahma Bhuta or Atmananda, or the state of self-satisfaction. This self-satisfaction is not like the satisfaction of the inactive fool. The inactive fool is in the stage of foolish ignorance, whereas the self-satisfied Atmananda is transcendental to the material state of existence. This stage of perfection is attained as soon as one is fixed in irrevocable devotional service. Devotional service is not inactivity, but the unalloyed activity of the soul. The soul's activity becomes adulterated in contact with matter, and as such, the diseased activities are expressed in the form of lust, desire, hankering, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep. The effect of devotional service becomes manifest by complete elimination of these effects of passion and ignorance. The devotee is fixed at once in the mode of goodness, and he makes further progress to rise to the position of Vasudev, or the state of unmixed sattva or Suddha Sattva. Only in his Suddha Sattva state can one always see Krishna face to face by dint of pure affection for the Lord.
A devotee is always in the mode of unalloyed goodness, therefore he harms no one. But the non-devotee, however educated he may be, is always harmful. A devotee is neither foolish nor passionate. The harmful, foolish, and passionate cannot be devotees of the Lord. However, they may advertise themselves as devotees by outward dress. A devotee is always qualified with all the good qualities of God. Quantitatively, such qualifications may be different, but qualitatively, both the Lord and his devotee are one and the same. So, let's go back. So, what is the effect of this bhakti? So, you can know something by its fruits, right? So, as soon as bhakti is established within the heart, then the lower modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, hankering, they disappear from the heart. And then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. So these are the symptoms of someone in whose heart bhakti has been established, which means that he is now free from the influence of lust, right, desire and hankering. So, many times we see people, especially in India and other places also, where people might exhibit some power or some magic, or we get attracted by the charisma that a person may have, or large number of following, or there's just so many things that attracts us. But the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam really establishes a way for us to recognize where there is true bhakti and where there is not. So one of the ways that we can know is that we won't see the influence of passion and ignorance, and we'll see that person to be completely established in goodness and free from lust, desire and hankering. There's a nice story of Prabhupada in that connection, where there was this son of a great industrialist, Śrīnathji, and Śrīnathji had this, when he met Prabhupada, he was very upset and he wanted to prove that Prabhupada was not a genuine person. So he says in one of his memories video, he says that how much he tried, like every single way, like he said, as a businessman, as an industrialist, there are so many things that we're always trying to find the weakness in another person in this way or that way. And I tried in so many different ways, but I was not able to find even one point where I could say that, this person has lust or greed or anything like that. And finally he accepted him as his spiritual master. So
I guess this also kind of describes how one can become completely happy, because these are the things that make us unhappy, the mode of passion and ignorance, and which manifests as lust, desire and hankering. And I guess in the modern world, people are trying to be happy by increasing the lust, increasing the desire and hankering for things, and actually in trying to become happy, people are becoming more and more unhappy. So I guess the whole discussion gradually is pointing to what makes us happy, because the sages asked what is the most beneficial thing, and one may ask that, what is the benefit of performing bhakti or this path, because people see so many people doing so many different things, but this is kind of really scientifically proving what makes us happy and how we can get there. So we'll open up for any comments or reflections.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Hare Krishna Mataji. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So when we talk about passion, ignorance, where the anger stands, like I have seen devotees, in my childhood I have seen very intelligent scholars like Pandits, they are they have so much of knowledge, but still their anger is like they have so much of anger. So we say that a person who is so much of knowledge in Vedas and all, they should be humble. There won't be any anger in them. So how you see that? And the other thing in my mind, Bhagwan Parashuram, we heard that his anger was so much. So how that? I don't understand this anger thing in the devotees.
Yeah, Pandits can display anger. Because they are, I don't know what kind of Pandits you have met, but when you see great devotees in our movement, then you don't see that anger. And anger is a product of mode of ignorance. So when anger is there, that means ignorance is there. They have not really cleaned out their heart. And knowledge, if not applied with the principles of bhakti, then knowledge can cause arrogance, and arrogance can cause anger, pride. Pride leads to anger. And Parashuram, his anger was transcendental anger. Just like when even Arjuna was fighting, he had to display anger, because without that you cannot fight. So anger is not that. Even the Supreme Lord displays anger, like when he is fighting with this boar, this fighting with Hiranyaksha, and then Hiranyaksha says many mean things to the Lord, And it is described in Bhagavatam that the Varaha incarnation, he becomes angry. He becomes hurt and he becomes angry. So anger is not necessarily when it is displayed by the Supreme Lord, or look like Lord Parashuram is the Supreme Lord himself. When he displays the anger, that anger is not coming from the mode of ignorance, it is coming from a transcendental plane, and it has a specific purpose for the benefit of the living entities. When a common entity, conditioned living being, displays anger from ignorance, then it is harmful to everybody and more to the person who is displaying it. So when you see that anger, that means you have to judge by the other activities the person is doing. Because sometimes Prabhupada would also become upset and angry at his disciples or certain things, but that doesn't mean that Prabhupada was in the mode of ignorance. So we have to look at the complete picture of the person and see all these emotions are coming from the spiritual world, including anger. And lust is also there in the spiritual world, right? Desire is also there in the spiritual world. But they have a spiritual nature. Whereas in the material realm, all these qualities, they have a material nature.
So that is very important to see why that anger is there and from where it is coming, right?
Yeah, you will see like Narad Muni cursing so many times in the Bhagavatam, right? And it may appear that they are cursing out of anger, but even the cursing of the great sages is actually for the benefit of those living entities, right? It turns out to be ultimately beneficial for them. So anger is not always bad. It depends on the person and their qualification, their own purification.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Anybody else?
Very good, Prabhu. Supreme Dham here.
Hare Krishna.
I like the statement Prabhupada makes that a non-devotee is always harmful. He makes it in the last paragraph, I think. And that was an interesting statement in that how a devotee is never harmful and a non-devotee is always harmful. And the way I understood it was that because a non-devotee is propagating some or the other philosophy or ism where there is no Krishna or no Supreme Personality of God in that. That's why a non-devotee is always harmful. Is that a correct understanding, bro?
Go ahead.
Yes, a non-devotee, even though he may, engage in some good activities, but because he's hovering on the platform of the modes of nature, so just like Shuchi asked this question about anger, so as long as a person is associated with these three modes, then he's not on a steady platform, and so his activities are continuously in a state of flux. So today he may be in a very charitable mood, but tomorrow, by the influence of the lower modes, he may become a very vicious person also. So that's why the non-devotee is always harmful, because he's associated with this material energy which is inferior in nature and which is constantly in a state of flux. A devotee, on the other hand, he harms no one because he's situated in his eternal connection with God, and so and hence he's. And I think another point that one should consider here is that it also works the other way around, that if someone is harming someone, then that means that person is not a devotee. And I think Prabhupada clarifies that in the subsequent sentences. He says, the harmful, foolish and passionate cannot be devotees of the Lord. However, they may advertise themselves as devotees by outward dress. So it's not like just because I'm a devotee, so I have like a card, like a ticket, and I can do anything because, hey, I can never be harmful, right? It's the other way around, that if I'm harming anyone, then I'm not a devotee, even though I may dress up like a devotee or I may advertise myself as a devotee, because a devotee always has good qualities. A devotee is not necessarily, just like Shuchi mentioned, a devotee is not necessarily a person who is a great scholar or a great anything. They're just a person who have the qualities of God, and they're just that's just when you're around them, you can experience these godly qualities. So it's the other way around, and that kind of connects with the one of the nama parat, right? Committing sins on the strength of the chanting of the holy name, because someone could easily take this and say, yeah, I'm a devotee, so I'm never harmful. I can get away with anything. But then that's why Prabhupada is going forward and saying, no, a devotee is neither foolish nor passionate. And so he's qualifying that it's not just because I'm wearing a kantimala so I'm not harmful. If I'm harmful, I'm not a devotee.
And I guess we're all trying to be devotees, and what this defined, the Prabhupada says the devotee is always in the mood of unalloyed goodness. So that's a very high level. I mean, to get to that point when we are in unalloyed goodness, one has to be completely cleansed of all modes of passion and ignorance. So we are all trying to be devotees, and maybe one day we'll become devotees.
I don't know if that helps, Premdam Prabhu. You have further thoughts on that?
It helps, Rani. That's very helpful, especially the part where you said that the vice versa, the reverse is also applicable. That if somebody is hurting somebody, is harmful, then he or she is not a devotee.
That's very important to understand, because sometimes people of religion, they take their position too much for granted and exploit that position and try to try to dominate, those that are innocent and show that, I am God's gift to mankind. So it's extremely important to recognize that as long as I have these bad qualities, I'm really not truly a devotee. And that keeps us humble. Otherwise, we may feel like we are endowed with all, what is it? A devotee, non-devotee is always harmful and a devotee is always beneficial, right? Easy to be in that mindset. So, anybody else? Yes, Sham.
It's okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sham Prabhu.
Oh, okay. I just had a question on the terminology Brahma Bhuta and Atmananda. Are these impersonal realizations? Because there's a Mayavadi terms that they also use for self-realization. So my question is that is being Krishna conscious and the height of Krishna consciousness and self-satisfaction, is that also inclusive of Mayavad realization as well? So, and do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, these are terms which can be applied to any stage. Brahma Bhuta means a Krishna conscious devotee is Brahma Bhuta also, because he is absorbed in the Supreme Brahman, Krishna. And Atmananda, absorbed in the highest pleasure of the self, and ultimate self is Krishna. So one who is absorbed in pleasure in serving Krishna is Atmananda, like Nityananda, right? Nityananda Prabhu's name is Nityananda. So he's always absorbed in the highest Ananda. Whereas a Mayavadi or impersonalist, their Ananda is much less or much lower level. So Brahma is Brahma Bhuta. The opposite is Jiva Bhuta. Jiva Bhuta means conditioned, one who is conditioned by this body and whose pleasure and realization is limited to the body. That is Jiva Bhuta. Brahma Bhuta is one whose conception of the self is not body but the spirit soul, and it's a whole spectrum. So Brahma Bhuta is a whole spectrum, and depending on where the person is in the Brahma Bhuta, he can be at the lowest stage of Brahma Bhuta or the highest stage of Brahma Bhuta. So pure devotee is at the highest stage of Brahma Bhuta.
And also, impersonal realization is included within the understanding or realization of Bhagavan, right? So we have Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. So the lower levels, Brahman and Paramatma are included. And so we see that a devotee is also, he sees Krishna's energy everywhere and he's conscious of, everything being spiritual, right? Brahman. And that's the state of the highest, topmost devotee, that all he sees everywhere is Krishna and his energy. So it's all included.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you much.
I don't know if there's somebody else who had something.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when I read the translation, do you think if we take Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's example here, this is a good example, because initially he was preaching, I think Jnana Yoga. I don't know.
Impersonalism and Mayavadi, yes.
Mayavadi philosophy. And then when he served Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in some way, and then he got mercy, and then he came to Bhakti Yoga. Then his heart became very soft, and he wrote so many prayers to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Can that example is okay here in this?
Yeah. Yes, of course. We see that he was a changed person, and like you're saying, his heart became very soft, right? And then later, of course, he even had trouble with Mukti Pada, right? He wanted to change that. He came to Lord Chaitanya and he said, I have trouble with this word Mukti Pada. It should not be that. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, and this connects with your question too, Shyam Prabhu. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that Mukti for a devotee is different. It does not mean impersonal liberation. So yes. So.
Anybody else, or we'll move on to the next verse? So this verse is more like also can be used for self-assessment as we are making progress in devotional service, allowing us to measure ourselves, mostly measure ourselves. Hare Krishna, Amritwani.
I have one question regarding that purpose in the first paragraph.
Okay.
It's meant that devotion service is not inactivity, but the alloyed activity of the soul. So why say that devotion service is activity? Because activities means it should be done in timings, but or I not understand that sentence properly. Can you explain that?
Devotional service is not inactivity but the unalloyed activity of the soul.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, it's devotional service is full of activity. I don't know what your real question is. But sometimes people may just say, okay, I'm just going to as you can see from the life of Prabhupada, it was very, very active. The devotee is always active in serving the Lord in different ways. The 9 ways of serving the Lord in devotional service: hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, in friendship, mode of servant, surrendering every soul. So those are all activities. It's not just running the mind in speculation. So therefore Prabhupada says it's not inactivity. Sometimes people may think that devotional services, people are sentimental and they don't do anything, right? They're a burden on the society. But devotee is always active in for one's own self-realization and also for helping others become self-realized. So he's always concerned about the benefit of every living entity. Therefore he is always active, either in the mind or through the body, depending on whatever the situation is. But that activity is geared towards pleasing the Lord, not pleasing the self. And in other ways, devotional service is a karma, right? So it does not produce any reaction. In that sense, devotional service is an activity because it does not produce any karma, as we were discussing in our karma class. Does that address your question? I didn't fully understand your question, so I tried to answer.
It's my understanding. I think I wrong interpreted that activities means it should be done in particular time, right? It's not going on forever. Or in this
devotional service activity is something that is going on in a particular time.
I think she meant a particular time period. Let's say it starts from X and ends at Y and then we are done. So there is end to it. There is, it's not like infinitely going on. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I mean the conditioned body, we have limitation by the time, right? You start your japa and then it ends at certain time, right? So just because it has time limitation, it doesn't mean that it is not devotional. Everything that we do, you cook. I mean, you don't cook throughout the whole day, right? You cook for some time and then you offer it to Krishna. So it has a beginning and an end. Every activity has a beginning and an end. So that doesn't stop it from being devotional activity. But the effect of time doesn't act on devotional activities. The results of the bhakti that the bhakti produces, they are not affected by time. Any material activity, the results that are produced by material activity, they are under the purview of time, so they will deteriorate over a period of time. But the results produced by the bhakti, they are not, time has no impact on them. They are forever. The results are forever. So when you chant Hare Krishna even once, the benefit of chanting Hare Krishna even once, although it may take a few seconds, but the benefit of that lasts forever. In that sense, it is not under the control of time. And of course, when you go back to the spiritual realm, then time is not there.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu, for clarifying. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, this is Bhavneet.
Hare Krishna, Bhavneet.
I have a question about the examples of the diseased activities that have been referred to. And I have a specific question about sleep. So because the soul is wearing the body, and for the body to replenish itself, a good sleep is required.
Yes.
So how is that considered a form of adulteration? And doesn't good sleep kind of rejuvenate you, and then is also responsible for sort of feeding the soul with on its journey towards attaining like a higher plane of bhakti?
Yes, very good question. Why is sleep considered here an adulteration, disease activity? Somebody wants to answer? Then I'll try.
Can I answer?
Let's know the devotees answer and then.
Okay then.
Anybody wants to answer, or Swarna, we can go ahead.
Can I give a shot, Prabhu?
Okay, go ahead, Bhaktilata.
Yeah, sleep is needed for the conditioned body, but it has to be in a regulated way, as in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, anybody who's regulated in his eating, sleeping, and then recreation is needed. I don't remember the exact wording, but he says it has to be regulated. So that is needed. And also, so in this context, sleep might refer to the mode of ignorance, like they are ignorant of the higher realization that is necessary, like there is some, like the scriptures or the knowledge about the self, like that, like completely ignorant of that could refer to a sleep. So
Okay.
that is my short. I don't know if I'm right.
No. Okay.
Am I right, Prabhu?
Yes, you are. Yeah. Let's hear what Swarna has to say, and then we'll wrap it up. Go ahead, Swarna.
I think it's talking about like oversleeping, because like Prabhupada in one of the purports somewhere, Prabhupada said that like since one people in these days sleep like 12 hours a day,
Hmm.
and that's already half her life wasted away. So maybe sleep is like kind of like a time waster. It's referred to as a time waster, especially if it's done way too much.
So yeah, I mean both are very good answers. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just one thing.
Your audio is not clear, Vishal. You need to do some. Vishal, you need to do something about your audio.
Okay. Yes.
It's always very like you're speaking from a pipe or something like that.
Okay. Is it better now?
It comes and goes. Maybe you need a microphone or something.
Sure, Prabhuji. Let me change my laptop. Maybe you can move on.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Prabhuji, you can move on. It will take time for me to change the laptop.
Now it's clearer, so go ahead.
Okay. So I was saying the amount of sleep required depends on the amount of activities that you do day to day, in what mode, if it is mode of ignorance and mode of passion activities throughout the day, that much more sleep you need to replenish your body. If you do more devotional and more activities in the mode of goodness, the amount of sleep automatically reduces. That's my observation. I may be wrong.
Yes. So these all three are very valid points. And sleep is a need for the conditioned soul. Sleep is not needed by the soul itself. Just because we have this body, that's why we need the sleep. And the sleep is also considered a sign of intelligence. In one place, Bhagavatam, it says, doubt and sleep, they are considered sign of intelligence. So we need good sleep even to execute devotional service. And for different people, the requirements are different. So somebody may be fully energized in 6 hours, somebody may need 8 hours. But I guess as Swarna was pointing out, we need to regulate our sleep and to keep ourselves fit. Oversleeping or undersleeping can both make us unfit for any kind of activity. So in a spiritual practice, we are trying to overcome sleep. Sleep signifies ignorance, and like for example, Arjuna's name is Gudakesha, which means one who has conquered sleep. That's one of his name. So that means somebody who has conquered ignorance. Sleep means forgetful of our body. Like when we sleep, we forget our body, right? And then we go into a dream state where we do different things in our dream. So sleep also means when we are ignorant of our body. What is the body for? What is the purpose of this body? How we should use it? So even a person may be awake, but he may be sleeping. In terms to, there is a verse in Bhagavad Gita which says that for a self-realized, what is night for a self-realized person is day for a person enjoying his senses, and vice versa. So a person is always awake, and a spiritual person also uses the sleep for a purpose, that I need to sleep so I can be energized next day to serve. So in that sense, sleep is, as you're saying, is a necessary thing. The reason it is said here is diseased activity, because these are all activities of the mode of ignorance and passion: lust, desire, hankering, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep. But for a spiritual person, all of these activities can be turned into positive activities, and that is the power of spiritual process. Even lust, Krishna says that when the lust for acquiring things and enjoying this material world can be turned towards a desire to serve the Lord and a desire to spread this message. So desire and hankering, all of this can be turned towards serving the Lord. So there's a question that how sleep is, why is it considered disease activity?
Where does it say?
Pavani, does it help?
Yes, very much. Thank you, Lokaji. And thank you everyone who answered my question. Thanks.
So there are two sides to all these things. Okay. I think we can move on. There is no other further point in this paragraph. Text 20. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogatah bhagavad tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.3, it is said that out of many thousands of ordinary men, one fortunate man endeavors for perfection in life. Mostly men are conducted by the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus they are engaged always in lust, desire, hankerings, ignorance, and sleep. Out of many such man-like animals, there is actually a man who knows the responsibility of human life and thus tries to make life perfect by following the prescribed duties. And out of many thousands of such persons who have thus attained success in human life, one may know scientifically about the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna. In the same Bhagavad Gita 18.55, it is also said that scientific knowledge of Shri Krishna is understood only by the process of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga.
The very same thing is confirmed herein in the above words. No ordinary man, or even one who has attained success in human life, can know scientifically or perfectly the personality of Godhead. Perfection of human life is attained when one can understand that he is not the product of matter, but is in fact spirit. And as soon as one understands that he has nothing to do with matter, he at once ceases his material hankerings and becomes enlivened as a spiritual being. This attainment of success is possible when one is above the modes of passion and ignorance, or in other words, when one is actually a Brahmana by qualification. A Brahmana is the symbol of Sattva Guna, or the mode of goodness. And others who are not in the mode of goodness are either Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, or less than the Shudras. The Brahmanical stage is the highest stage of human life because of its good qualities. So one cannot be a devotee unless one at least qualifies as a Brahmana. The devotee is already a Brahmana by action, but that is not the end of it. As referred to above, such a Brahmana has to become a Vaishnava, in fact to be actually in the transcendental stage. A pure Vaishnava is a liberated soul and is transcendental even to the position of a Brahmana. In the material stage, even a Brahmana is also a conditioned soul, because although in the Brahmanical stage the conception of Brahman or transcendence is realized, scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is lacking. One has to surpass the Brahmanical stage and reach the Vasudev stage to understand the personality of Godhead Krishna. The science of the personality of Godhead is a subject matter for study by the postgraduate students in the spiritual line. Foolish men or men with a poor fund of knowledge do not understand the Supreme Lord, and they interpret Krishna according to their respective whims. The fact is, however, that one cannot understand the science of the personality of Godhead unless one is freed from the contamination of the material modes, even up to the stage of a Brahmana. When a qualified Brahmana factually becomes a Vaishnava in the enlivened state of liberation, he can know what is actually the personality of Godhead.
I guess the important word here is Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam, that there is a science behind knowing God. It is not a sentimental process, and that science can be known, understood by Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata. By engaging in the process of Bhagavad Bhakti, one can understand the science and one can understand God in a very realistic and scientific manner, which means that it can be it's repeatable. So scientific is something that we understand as something that can be repeated by anybody and then get the same result. So that's another way of understanding this, that this is accessible to everybody.
So the main thing here again is what does it mean, scientific knowledge, right? So it means different things. It first means that scientific means that it is meant, it is repeatable, right? That there is a science behind it, and Prabhupada would often refer to this as a science and not a religion. Why? Because religion is like a belief system, and science is something that is universal, and these are truths that transcend race, culture, just all kinds of distinctions or limitations that we put on it. It's applicable, like Prabhupada would say, as like in the Bhagavad Gita, there is a verse that says the embodied soul continuously passes from childhood to boyhood to youth, and then old age. The soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. So Prabhupada said, where's the question of religion? This is something that we can all observe, that everyone's body is changing. So Prabhupada referred to this as a science, which means that it is logical, and it lays down the steps, and it can be repeated by anyone. It's also scientific in the sense that the word that is used is vijnana, which means that it's not just meant as knowledge that we are meant to keep in our head, but it's meant to actually transform our heart. And ultimately it's meant to be practically realized. So it's easy for us to understand this information and this knowledge, but the practical application of this knowledge is sometimes a bit of a challenge. So scientific also means that one must not just know that I'm not this body, but one must have practical scientific realization of that fact. So those are some points. And then of course Prabhupada is talking about a Brahmana and a Vaishnava. So we'll just stop here and see if you guys have any thoughts.
I have one question here.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, what's the for someone at my stage who has some theoretical background but isn't doing much service, what's a good type of service to start out with? Like, is serving in a temple, like helping them, prepare for a Sunday feast or something? Is that a good type of service, or what's the best type of service to start out with?
Well, right now it's an interesting time to ask that question, because our temples would not allow you to go in and wash dishes. So service can mean so many different things. Chanting is service. Chanting is service. Reading what we are doing every evening, we may not feel that this is service, but this is service, right? And I think we read about this in previous verse, that just by recitation and hearing of this Bhagavatam, great service is done. So this is great service, to come together and recite the Bhagavatam and hear the Bhagavatam and discuss the Bhagavatam. And then to take that further, to share this with those that are interested, to think of ways to share, and also to assist those that are trying to share, which means that whatever gifts or talents I may have, I may be a good writer, or I may be a good, arts person, or Krishna has endowed every single living entity with some opulence, some intelligence, some skill, and to utilize that to further this knowledge, that is actually one of the best services that one can do to the acharyas. Prabhupada, I was just reading just yesterday that Prabhupada was also quarantined, and he didn't like it very much. But then I think Shrudakirti Prabhu was saying that how Prabhupada would stay up late night, and he used that time to translate these books. So a great service, because if you remember, we read earlier on that simply by serving a great devotee, right, one develops an urge to hear the message of Vasudeva. So how do we serve these great Vaishnavas? It is their great desire that this knowledge can become popular and that people can be benefited. And that's why all these great acharyas spend so much time late at night, and the Goswamis, for example, they would sleep under a different tree every night, just translating and writing these literatures. So if we can somehow take it upon ourselves to find ways how to distribute and share this knowledge in whichever capacity we can, then great service is done. And of course, then there's all kinds of different services that one can plug into.
Yeah, service is accepting the instruction of a great devotee or Lord Krishna in our heart, and then trying to follow that to our best of our capacity. That is service. Sometimes we have a concept of service that I have to always physically do something, then only it's service. Or when I have to do something for others, then it is service. Of course that is service. But when we try to purify ourselves and take this message in our heart and even meditate on that, think about it and apply it to ourselves and try to advance, that is also great service, because we are following the instructions of the great souls. So hearing from great souls and following the instructions is great service, just by doing that. Even if you are not able to, sometimes a situation may come in our life and we physically cannot do much. Right? So many devotees, they go through a stage when they maybe they may be bedridden or they cannot really do anything. So even remembering Krishna, even though we may not be able to speak, even we may not be able to even chant, situations may come like that. So even thinking about Krishna, remembering Krishna, that is also great service. So Krishna is very generous in accepting. Main thing is to how are we taking Krishna in our heart, and how are we following his instructions. So it's a very broad definition of service.
And of course, there can be more specific details, like if we, when we are chanting, we can really pray and say, please, Hare, energy of Krishna, Krishna, please engage me in your service. And then really praying for that, and then Krishna will reveal to us, and then we can talk to the devotees who we are close to and ask them, if there is a particular service that maybe inspires. So there are many ways that one can go about it. It starts with a desire, Naji. I think your desire for service is very auspicious, and just by cultivating that desire, then Krishna reveals what is a good service. And it may change in different times. It's a very good question. Very good question. Thank you. Anybody else? Association means to actually serve and assist the devotees who are trying to spread this message and serve their spiritual master. That is the best kind of association. Shava Bhakti.
Yeah, I was just thinking, being in goodness mean nowadays Guru Maharaj is talking a lot about cultivating good habits. So I was just thinking that how goodness is kind of a synonym with developing good habits. I mean, we can keep on saying that, we have to develop goodness, or we have to overcome the ignorance and passion. But how, at a practical level, how we can do that is just by developing good habits like, truthfulness or humility or being honest. So as a devotee, otherwise it feels very hard, like what does goodness mean? So in yesterday's lecture also Guru Maharaj was talking that how just by being truthful, how you attain Vak Siddhi, like whatever you say will become truth. Or if you are kind of renounced, he was speaking from Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and he was saying that how if you are detached from the accumulating wealth, automatically you will attract the wealth. Yeah, so it was really nice that just being in goodness, how it develops everything from material level to spiritual level.
Very nice point. Yeah, I heard that yesterday. That just by renouncing wealth, suddenly you'll be surrounded by wealth. That's very nice. Very nice. Anybody else? Madan Murari Prabhu, do you have anything you want to share? Or Radhikanam, Bhakti Lata?
Hare Krishna ji.
Yes.
I would say what Shyamakapti said, I think goodness means developing good habit. It made me realize that it's practical, right? You can talk about goodness, you can talk about being honest, you can talk, but there has to be a way. Today we were reading the Loka number 934 in which Vandana Bhava, right? So I was also appreciating how Krishna has given a very practical way. He's saying, how do you become a devotee? You worship me, you pay obeisances to me. So there is a practical aspect which is laid out, and if you do that, then you become a devotee. So similarly, as Shama Bhakti was also saying that in order to develop goodness, we have to develop good habits. And good habits and surround with good people around. So then automatically that goodness rubs on us, and we develop the mode of goodness, or maybe not just goodness, but the transcendental qualities start developing.
Very nice, very nice. Excellent point. Yeah, Krishna consciousness is scientific, right? So it's very practical. Yeah. Very nice. Bhakti Lata, do you have anything?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, I don't have much to say, but I really like the point, like how you said, like when Prabhupada was quarantined, he sat and he wrote the book. So I was also thinking, like last 2 classes, Guru Maharaj has been quoting from Yoga Sutra, so I assumed that he's reading that. And then I was relishing like how he's he's not traveling, so he's using his time to go deeper in the Shastra, and he's sharing that with all of us. Like, so I was thinking like how fortunate we are to hear that.
Very nice.
And then some people are fortunate, and I mean, I'm not that fortunate to go deeper, like use this time of so much, like there's nothing to do, so we can use this time to go. So you are also saying, right, like I have so much desire to do so much things. You were saying we should find all one pot meal.
Yeah.
So we have time. So
it's true. There's so much for a devotee. 24 hours is not enough for a devotee. It's not enough. One lifetime. This body is so limited, right? And that is those are the desires that, just by serving Naji, one desires to do more and more service. So it's ever increasing. And we can pray to Krishna like that, and then Krishna will make it happen eventually. I don't know if there's anyone else.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Hare Krishna, Babuji.
Hare Krishna.
I was waiting to ask this question, but it's a very silly one, not maybe related to the first verse you read.
Okay, go ahead.
There was an example Mataji gave explaining that okay, we should not. So one is the devotee, and one is the speakers or the people we listen to. Now, you explained pretty well that how a devotee needs to be, or how a devotee should be, or who is a devotee. But there are so many speakers out there, and because of social media, they're very easily available, right? Like it or not, and you tend to see their videos or hear about them. Now, from the faith, which is so precious, and you can't put faith into everything, is there any easy way to identify good speaker versus quote-unquote not so good speaker, or is there any way we can, or like my mom always says that गाय खाती क्या उससे क्या फर्क पड़ता है, गाय की तीती क्या उस पे focus करो. So, or is it something like that? Whatever we are listening to, whenever given a chance, if something is good, then don't worry about the speaker and listen to it. Or we should also focus on how the personality of that particular person.
You have to look at the complete picture. That's a oversimplified example in one sense. I mean, it is said that we are what we eat. There's another very popular statement: we are what we eat. So, what we ingest from our senses, what we hear, and how we use our life, right? That's when, and Prabhupada also says that a fool is not recognized until he speaks. So, a person's life is dedicated. Like Krishna says that he gives the symptom of a Mahatma. He says that Sattam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantasya Didavarta. That a true Mahatma or a sadhu is always engaged in glorifying me, remembering me, serving me. So we have to look at the symptoms of the person outside of when they are speaking, because it's easy to speak good things, but then if they are not following their achar and prachar, there are two things here. Achar is the behavior and their life, and prachar is what they are speaking. So they both have to be aligned. A person has to practice what they are preaching, or at least try to practice what they are preaching sincerely. Otherwise, it's a hypocrisy, and it's not going to have any impact. Especially when godly talks are given by people who have ulterior motive and who are using that podium that they get for material benefit, which happens a lot in India. People use that spiritual podium to attract thousands of people and speak in a very flowery language and attract a lot of money and fame and all that, and people get cheated sooner or later. So there's a statement in the Bhagavatam which says Anda yatha ande upagiyamana tepi uishatantram urdam nibaddha, that it's like a blind leading a pack of blinds to cross the street, and they all fall in a ditch. So we have to be awake to see the symptoms of a person who we are listening to, and do our background work before we decide who we should listen to.
Also, on a slightly different note, our hearing from a person is not just information collection. It's actually it's a transfer of a person's faith, and hearing is a very intimate process. So even though we can hear at any given point in time, there are so many lectures going on, and we should try and get as much association as we can, but there is no substitute to a deeper kind of hearing where the person that you're hearing from, you're actually connected at a personal level. And in that case, what happens is in that relationship, it's a reciprocal relationship where like tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya, right? That way you can inquire, and also at the same time you can render service, and in that way, that exchange of knowledge, and in that way the person can actually help you understand the truth. So bhakti is a very personal process. It's a path of personalism, and so while we definitely by first checking out the speaker and making sure that he or she is properly situated, but at the same time one should also have some devotees with whom one can inquire confidentially and also reveal one's mind in confidence, and in that way one can get further training in Krishna consciousness, and in that way one can stay protected, because even though Krishna consciousness or spiritual life is very simple, but there are lots and lots of subtle points there, and in order to catch those subtle points and to understand the mood, it is extremely important that we should also have some intimate hearing and not just hearing from a distance, because when we just hear from a distance, it's a one-way transmission. You're just hearing, but you're not getting a chance to really express your own heart, talk about your doubts, your struggles, and there's also no relationship. So the person is also not speaking specifically to you. Just like when Prabhupada gave lectures, those were general. They were meant for a broader general audience, and then he would speak one-on-one with his disciples. He would write letters, and they were much more specific for a person's time, place, and circumstances. So we need both.
Yeah, but the main thing is ear is the most important sense that we have, and we should be very judicious in who we give our ear to, because there is a direct connection between the ear and the heart, and if you're not judicious, then our intelligence can get divided.
I don't know if that kind of addresses what you were thinking, Anshu.
No, yes, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
That reciprocation and personal connection is the key. I understand now.
Yeah, and it's.
I totally relate to it now. Okay.
Yeah, I tend to be a little. I think, and I don't know if it's a good thing, but in general, I think veering on the side of being conservative when it comes to hearing. I think it's not a bad thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
So Bhaktilata ji was referring to Guru Maharaj.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm sounding naive here, but
who are they talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, well, he. You wanna?
His name is Vaisheshika Prabhu, Vaisheshika. And he is a disciple.
He's the same Guru Maharaj who had come to your
Yes.
They are all disciples. Many of the people on this call, they are his disciples. And he lives in California, and he's a disciple of Prabhupada. And he gives lectures nowadays quite a lot. He's on Facebook also.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, go ahead.
Sometimes, like I feel there is a struggle when your body is not, like you have some pain or something going on with your body, and the other things that you are doing. Though I'm trying to listen, though I'm trying to read, but my mind is not there. Like I could see that my reading is like when I'm like I'm not feeling well, then my reading is actually, it's not a reading actually. I won't say it's a reading because nothing is going in though I'm reading it. So how to develop that muscle that where I can hear and understand even when the like little bit of discomfort is there in the body.
Yes, it's a struggle, and maybe trying to maybe focus in those situations when we are not able to give our full attention because of the bodily discomfort or whatever the situation is. Maybe taking out 1 or 2 sentences, that's something that appeals to you, and thinking about them. If you're not able to read, maybe picking up a couple of things and then meditating on them while you are maybe busy with something else. So that way you are taking out some nectar, and anyways we should meditate on what we read. But especially when in your situation you're describing, we can always meditate more deeply on a few things rather than the whole thing. So kind of establishing that more intimate connection with the word.
Also, I've thought a lot about this myself, that if I'm really tired, I'm definitely not going to pick up prayers of personified Vedas, so maybe picking up a section that is less dense so that it's easier when I'm really tired. That's one thing. The second thing is not seeing our reading necessarily as something that we like. Of course we want to understand, but also seeing that reading as our time, as our association with Prabhupada, right, as with the acharyas. And even though I may not understand, just like Prabhupada was sitting in front of his Guru Maharaj Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would use a very high lofty language, Prabhupada says, I couldn't really understand anything in the beginning, but I still just sat there and I just tried to still hear. So in the same way, sometimes even though we may be feeling perfectly healthy and perfectly attentive, we may still not understand so much. I know that as a fact for myself. So when I still continue to hear, so in good times or in bad times, in sickness or in health, I still keep doing it, and I see that as my service and as my association with Prabhupada. And Mukunda Maharaj, he talks a lot about the power of numerical strength, because this was a question when he told us to read 30 pages. I said, but Guru Maharaj, isn't it better to read maybe lesser pages with quality? Is quality, and I guess the question I was really asking was quantity over quality. And Maharaj said there is something to be said about numerical strength. So even though we may feel that, so much of my reading didn't really have that depth, but I still do it. And I do it in the mood of service. And then Krishna will give us the strength and the intelligence to be able to maybe go even more deeply within it. But through that reading, at least one thing that becomes very clear is that we can at least develop a quality of humility, right? Krishna, I'm trying to approach you through this Bhagavatam, but I'm sorry, I'm feeling so weak right now, so please reveal yourself to me. So even if I cannot really understand every word, but at least I can make my reading of Bhagavatam as an act of prayer, right? As an expression of my deep longing to connect with him. And that is the real purpose of reading Bhagavatam, right? Is to associate and to try and serve Krishna.
Yes.
Yeah, this is something I've experienced many times, when, especially when I had pneumonia and flu. It was very, very difficult. It was very, very difficult. And, what can be done? The body is and we can only imagine that at the time of our leaving this body, we are going to be in a even more difficult condition. So one should just practice. And also, it helps us become humble. I find that I may have so much of pride over my intelligence and my ability to understand and comprehend. And in those times, we actually become very humbled by the fact that without, like Krishna says, from me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. And you realize that if Krishna doesn't give us, this ability, then we, what can you do? Our reading is anyways, the other story that comes to my mind is this Brahmana who's trying to read the Bhagavad Gita. You're talking about bad health. He's illiterate. And he's still doing it, in spite of the fact that he doesn't know how to read or write. And yet he's getting all these realizations. So.
And maybe breaking it up, sometimes reading a whole chunk at a time is not practical because of the situation, body situation. So maybe breaking it up, and maybe somebody else read it to you and you listen. That is also another practical thing that can be done.
Yes.
So
my problem was though I have done these sections, I break the time that I'm gonna do this much this time, this much this time. But I feel like nothing is really going in.
That's okay. That's okay. You're making the effort to read. That is what is going into your spiritual credit. So it's not that every time you'll read everything and you'll understand everything and everything will go in. Going in is one aspect, but doing it regularly is another aspect. Krishna will notice that.
Okay, I don't know if there's... I don't know what you want to do. Yes, Rima. Yes, Rima.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji and Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Can I add something here?
Yeah, go ahead.
In one of the lectures, I have heard that whatever purports Prabhupada has written, so you don't think that it's the purports have been written for somebody else or some other devotees. You just consider that it was not easier for Prabhupada to reach you out. So that's why he left these letters for you on each and every shlokas on verse, and you just, before reading the purport, you just think that Prabhupada is saying dear, and you just consider your name there, dear so and so, and then you read that purport, so you will feel that Prabhupada is saying directly to you whatever you want to, automatically it will attract your attention, and your reading will improve. And if some personal letter you receive, so you read it very attentively and what is being said, so
thank you.
You read it with very interest, in an interesting manner.
That's a very nice point. Thank you, Rima, for sharing that.
That is very, very nice. Very nice.
Hare Krishna,
yes,
Prabhu. Can I also share my realization?
Yes, please do.
Go ahead.
Yeah, since Guru Maharaj told in the beginning that we need to read Bhagavatam every day, for me it was initially very difficult because my concentration was very, very poor and I could not understand what was written over there. But I kept on reading actually. That really helped me, and I started with a very small thing like 4 pages a day. And what I used to do, I would, if I did not understand a particular thing, I will go back to that thing again, maybe twice or thrice or whatever. And it took me really an hour or to finish 4 or 5 pages initially. But slowly, by practice, now I'm able to read 20 pages daily. And what I do, I divide it into 2 sections. I do 10 in the morning and I do 10 at night before sleep. So that way I don't have to do a whole lot of things. And it's easy for me to read and understand what is written there. And it really took time. I didn't come to 20 pages in 1 day or 2 days, but maybe within a year that happened. So that way it became very, very easy for me. And now, even in a lot of disturbance, I am able to read and focus very well. So
Very
I don't know
nice.
if that helps.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
really practical advice. Thank
And
you.
it's very encouraging and inspiring to hear that, Achyuta. And I've seen you go through all of these different phases, and it's just been incredible transformation. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I guess, one thing we can definitely practice, since we're talking about a scientific process, is to take up the practice of chanting very seriously in our life. Try it and see how that changes your consciousness. It's again something scientific, means that it can be verified by your own self. So one should take up this practice of regular chanting, and by doing that one will see how this knowledge will become revealed to us, and how all of these influence of lust, anger, greed and hankering will gradually diminish from our heart. So it's something that we can give ourselves a try. So on that note, yes.
Yeah, so it's 7:30, so we'll kind of wrap it up here. Thank you all for coming. We'll join again on Wednesday.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu Narsingh Dev.
Oh yes. So one thought that I've heard from different devotees, Narasimhadev Arti, we don't have to, we can just say Narasimhadev and Jai Prahlad Maharaj and end it there. Who wants to sing it today?
Can I sing it today?
Yeah, who's that?
Monica?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Sonika.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Hiranyakashipurvakshaha. Shilatankanakalaye.
Ito Narshimo Parato Narshimo.
Ito Narsimho Parato Narsimho.
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narshimo.
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimho.
Tahe Narshimo Ritaye Narshimo.
Bahe Narsimho Hidaye Narsimho.
Narasimhamadem Sharanam Prapade.
Narasimhamadim Sharanam Prapade.
Tavakara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringa Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringa
Jagadisha Hare. Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare.
Jayo Nrsimhadev, Jayo Nrsimhadev, Jayo Nrsimhadev, Jayo Nrsimhadev,
Jayo Nrsimhadev, Jayo Nrsimhadev, Jayo Nrsimhadev.
Jayo Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Nrsimhadev Bhagwan ki jai, Prahlad Maharaj ki jai. Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.